The neural restraints bit into Commander Kylix Voss's wrists as she was dragged before the Hegemony Council. Her uniform torn from the battle that had cost humanity its last orbital defense platform. Around the crystalline amphitheater, 12 alien species sat in judgment, some with too many eyes, others with none at all, but all united in their contempt for the upstart humans who had dared resist their expansion. "The Terran resistance ends today," announced Chancellor Vextol. His serpentine form coiled around the central speaking dais. "Your homeworld burns, your fleets are scattered, and your leaders dead. All except you, Commander." Kylix said nothing, her violet eyes scanning the assembled aliens with the cold calculation that had made her the youngest fleet commander in human history. At 28, she had already orchestrated 3 impossible victories against hegemony forces. But even she couldn't fight mathematics. Humanity was outnumbered 10,000 to 1. However, Vextol continued, his scaled lips curving into what might have been a smile. "The hegemony is not without mercy. We offer your species one final opportunity for survival." A section of the floor rose, revealing a containment cell. Inside stood a figure that made Kylix's breath catch. Tall, humanoid, but clearly not human. His skin held a faint luminescence, and when he turned toward her, his eyes were pools of liquid silver that seemed to hold the depth of stars. "Prince Rinder, of the ethereal collective Vextol," announced, "the first of his kind to be captured alive in 3 centuries of war. The ethereals, humanity's only potential allies in this galaxy, beings of pure energy who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. They had been fighting the hegemony longer than any other species, but their numbers were few, their reproduction slow. The capture of royalty was a catastrophic blow to their cause." "The terms are simple," Vextol's mental voice echoed in both their minds. "A union between your species. The human will bear ethereal offspring, creating a new hybrid race under hegemony control. In exchange, both your peoples will be granted protectorate status, slavery with dignity, rather than extinction." Kylix felt the blood drain from her face. The hegemony's genetic manipulation programs were legendary in their cruelty. They had turned dozens of species into specialized slave castes, their children born with neural implants that made rebellion impossible. "And if we refuse?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then Earth dies today, and the ethereal collective follows within the year." Prince Rinder spoke for the first time, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in her bones. "How many of your people remain, Commander?" 2 billion, she whispered, hidden in the asteroid fields and outer colonies. "And yours, Prince?" Vextol inquired mockingly. "Perhaps 50,000. The ethereal's pain was evident, despite his alien features. The last of an ancient line. The silence stretched between them as the weight of entire civilizations pressed down on their shoulders. Kylix had sworn an oath to protect humanity at any cost. But this was asking her to sacrifice not just her body, but her children's freedom before they were even born. Yet as she looked into Rinder's silver eyes, she saw something unexpected, not resignation, but a flicker of defiance. A plan, perhaps, or simply the refusal to surrender hope. "We need time to consider," she said finally. Vextol's laughter was like acid on metal. "You have until the next cycle. Choose wisely, your species' survival depends on it." As the guards dragged them to separate cells, Kylix caught one last glimpse of the ethereal prince. In that moment, she realized their captors had made a crucial error. They assumed a forced marriage would break their spirits. They had never considered it might forge them into something stronger. The ceremony took place in the hegemony's Grand Assembly Hall, broadcast across 1,000 worlds as a symbol of their dominion. Kylix stood in shackles of crystallized dark matter, her simple white dress a mockery of human tradition. Beside her, Prince Rinder wore the ceremonial bonds of his people, bands of living light that pulsed with each heartbeat. Chancellor Vextol officiated with obvious relish, his forked tongue tasting the air for their despair. by the ancient laws of binding, witnessed by the Hegemony Council. These two shall be joined. Their offspring will serve as the foundation of a new order. The mental link forged between them was immediate and overwhelming. Kylix gasped as Rinder's consciousness touched hers, not the brutal violation she had expected, but something almost gentle, like warm water flowing over broken glass. She felt his memories, vast libraries of crystal containing the wisdom of his people, the weight of royal duty crushing down on shoulders that were still barely past what humans would consider adolescence. In return, her memories flooded into him, the terror of watching Earth's cities burn from orbit, the desperate brilliance that had kept her small fleet alive against impossible odds, the crushing loneliness of command, but also something else, a core of unbreakable determination that had carried her through every nightmare. Fascinating, Vextal observed as their bond stabilized. The neurological compatibility is higher than projected. Perhaps this union will prove more productive than anticipated. They were given quarters in the Hegemony's research facility, gilded cage with every comfort except freedom. The rooms were split between human and ethereal environmental needs, with a common area where they could interact under constant surveillance. For the first 3 days, they barely spoke aloud, communicating only through the bond when necessary. But gradually, as they began to understand the depth of their shared connection, real conversation became possible. "Your people's resistance was remarkable," Rinder said one evening, as they sat watching the alien stars through their prisons. "We monitored your final battle. No other species has inflicted such casualties on a Hegemony fleet." "We're stubborn," Kylix replied. "It's our best and worst trait." She paused, studying his luminescent profile. "Your people are older than any other spacefaring race. Why haven't you found a way to defeat them?" "Because we are few, and they are many. And because," he hesitated, silver eyes meeting hers, "because we have never learned to truly cooperate with others. We are individuals by nature, not pack hunters like humans." Through their bond, she felt the loneliness that had defined his existence, centuries of isolation broken only by formal court duties and the weight of his people's expectations. It was a loneliness she recognized, having spent her adult life making decisions that sent others to their deaths. "They're watching us," she said softly, indicating the nearly invisible monitoring devices, "waiting for us to fulfill our obligation." "I know." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with surprising warmth. "But they cannot force what they truly want. The genetic compatibility requires emotional resonance. Without it, any offspring would be weak, unsuitable for their purposes." Kylix felt a spark of hope. "So we buy time." Time, yes, but also, through the bond, she felt his growing respect for her tactical mind, his appreciation for the quick wit that had kept her alive, perhaps something more. Their captors grew impatient as weeks passed without the genetic synthesis they desired. Vextal visited personally, his mental intrusions growing more aggressive as he probed for signs of the deeper bonding that would make their union productive. "You will not delay forever," he hissed during one particularly unpleasant interrogation. "Your people suffer while you play at resistance. Every day brings new executions on Earth, new orbital bombardments of ethereal colonies." But their bond had grown stronger, and with it came an unexpected discovery. When their minds were fully linked, Kylix could access fragments of Rinder's energy manipulation abilities, while he gained fleeting moments of her tactical intuition and human adaptability. Late one night, as they lay beside each other, still hesitant to cross certain boundaries despite their growing connection, Rinder spoke into the darkness. "I have been thinking about your military strategies, the way you use seemingly impossible maneuvers to create opportunities where none existed. And what if a marriage forced by necessity could become a weapon forged by choice?" Through their bond, she felt the shape of his growing plan, dangerous, desperate, but with a kind of audacious brilliance that had defined humanity's brief but spectacular war against the galaxy. For the first time since her capture, Commander Calyx Voss smiled. 3 months into their imprisonment, the first test results came back positive. Calyx felt the moment of conception through their bond, not just the biological confirmation their captors craved, but something far more profound. The life growing within her carried both their genetic patterns, but also something unprecedented, a direct neural link to both parents that pulsed with potential. Extraordinary, Dr. Velthar, the hegemony's chief geneticist, announced as she reviewed the readings. Her insectoid limbs clicked with excitement as she manipulated the holographic displays. The hybrid is developing neural pathways we've never observed. The child will be able to access both ethereal energy manipulation and human cognitive adaptability from birth. Chancellor Vextel materialized in their quarters that evening, his serpentine form radiating satisfaction. Finally, progress. The first generation of the new slave caste takes shape, but through their deepening bond, Calyx and Rinder were discovering something the hegemony hadn't anticipated. Their child wasn't just inheriting their abilities, it was amplifying them. When they linked minds completely, focusing on the growing life between them, their combined powers reached levels that should have been impossible. The theoretical framework exists in our oldest archives, Rinder explained during one of their clandestine planning sessions, his thoughts carefully shielded from surveillance. True symbiosis between consciousness and energy. My people, abandoned such research millennia ago as too dangerous. Dangerous how? Calyx asked, one hand resting on her still flat stomach where their child grew. Because it could create beings powerful enough to reshape reality itself. The early experiments were catastrophic. Through their bond, she felt his memories of ancient texts describing the ethereal ancestors, beings of such power they could manipulate matter at the quantum level, create or destroy entire star systems with focused will. The modern ethereals were descendants of survivors who had deliberately limited their own abilities to prevent such devastation from recurring. But our child won't be pure ethereal, Calyx pointed out. Human genetics might provide the stability your ancestors lacked, perhaps. Or perhaps we are creating something that will doom us all. Their conversations were interrupted by increasingly frequent medical examinations. As the hegemony monitored their child's development, Dr. Velthar's excitement grew with each passing week as the fetus displayed unprecedented neural activity. The hybrid's brain is developing structures we've never seen, she reported to Vextel. Quantum-level processing capabilities combined with human pattern recognition. If our projections are correct, this child will be able to interface directly with matter at the subatomic level, while maintaining the strategic thinking that made humans such formidable opponents. What the doctor didn't realize was that Calyx and Rinder were already learning to interface with those same quantum structures through their bond with their unborn child. Late at night, in the deepest meditation their watchers couldn't detect, they practiced manipulating individual atoms in the air around them, slowly building the skills they would need for their escape. The first real test came when Vextel decided to accelerate their cooperation through more direct coercion. Guards arrived to separate them, planning to hold Rinder in isolation until Calyx agreed to undergo procedures that would maximize their child's potential as a weapon. The moment the neural disruptors touched Rinder, both parents felt their child's distress through the bandit keening note of fear and pain that resonated through quantum space itself. Without conscious thought, Calyx reached out through her connection to both her husband and child, channeling their combined will into the crystalline walls of their prison. The molecular bonds, holding the crystal together simply, stopped. The walls didn't explode or shatter, they quietly dissolved into component atoms, leaving the guards standing in empty air with their weapons aimed at nothing. In the stunned silence that followed, Rinder stepped forward, his form blazing with energy that made the artificial lighting seem dim by comparison. "We decline your offer of separation," he said calmly. Alarms began wailing throughout the facility. Through their bond, Calyx felt her child's presence strengthening, as if their first act of defiance had awakened something that had been sleeping. The life growing within her wasn't just inheriting their abilities, it was actively enhancing them, creating feedback loops that exponentially increased their power. "Fascinating," she murmured, watching as backup containment systems activated around them. "I don't think they expected us to develop parental instincts quite this quickly, or quite this effectively," Rinder agreed, his silver eyes now literally glowing with power. "Our child appears to have strong opinions about separation." As hegemony security forces surrounded them with weapons designed to contain both human cunning and ethereal energy manipulation, Calyx felt a moment of perfect clarity. Their captors had intended to create the ultimate slave instead. They had forged the key to their own destruction. The real question was whether she and Rinder could control what they had unleashed, or if their love for each other and their unborn child would be strong enough to guide a power that could reshape the galaxy itself. Looking into her husband's blazing eyes, feeling their child's presence pulsing between them like a new star waiting to be born, Commander Calyx Voss made her choice. Time to find out. The hegemony's response was swift and overwhelming. Within hours of their first display of enhanced abilities, Calyx and Rinder found themselves in a new Prisina zero-point containment field that existed outside normal space-time, where their quantum manipulations should have been impossible. The containment field operates by severing the connection between consciousness and quantum substrate, Dr. Veltar explained to Chancellor Vextel as they observed their prisoners through multi-dimensional sensors. No known being can access energy manipulation from within this void, but their child was something unprecedented. Through the bond linking all three of them, Calyx felt their unborn daughter reaching across impossible distances, her developing consciousness already operating on levels that transcended conventional physics. The baby's neural structures were creating quantum entanglement, not just with her parents, but with the fundamental forces of reality itself. "She's magnificent," Rinder whispered, his hand covering Calyx's where it rested on her growing belly. Even through the containment field, they could feel their daughter's presence, curious, powerful, and utterly fearless. "She's going to change everything," Calyx agreed. Through their bond, she was beginning to understand the true scope of what they had created. Their daughter wouldn't just be a hybrid of human and ethereal, she would be something entirely new. A bridge between consciousness and the quantum realm that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves. The realization came to them simultaneously. They weren't just prisoners anymore. They were incubating a weapon that could free every enslaved species in the galaxy. Weeks passed in the void prison as their daughter continued to develop. The hegemony's scientists conducted increasingly desperate experiments, trying to understand how the hybrid was maintaining any connection to quantum space from within perfect isolation. What they couldn't grasp was that their daughter existed partially outside conventional space-time, her consciousness already touching dimensions the hegemony couldn't even detect. "The hybrid's neural development has exceeded all projections," Dr. Velther reported during one of her briefings. "She appears to be processing information at quantum speeds while maintaining coherent thought patterns. If this continues, she may be capable of instantaneous calculation across galactic distances." What the doctor didn't say what she couldn't know was that their daughter was already in communication with something else. Through dreams and quantum whispers, Calyx began to sense other presences, the scattered remnants of humanity hiding in deep space, the surviving ethereal colonies, and something more. Other hybrid children, born from unions between different species, all carrying fragments of the same quantum consciousness. The hegemony has been conducting this program for centuries, Rinder realized during one of their meditative communions, forcing marriages between captured representatives of different species, trying to create controllable hybrids. But they never created anything like her, Calyx said. feeling their daughter's response to their conversation, a pulse of amused agreement that rippled through local space-time. No, because they never forced a union between two people who chose to love each other. The truth of it resonated through their bond. The hegemony's other hybrid programs had produced slaves because they were built on coercion and despair. But their marriage, begun in chains, had become something transformative through choice and mutual respect. Their daughter was growing within that love, her quantum consciousness shaped by the decision two desperate people had made to trust each other completely. On the day their daughter decided to be born, reality hiccuped. The containment field, designed to isolate them from quantum space, suddenly became a conduit. As Kylix's labor began, their daughter's consciousness reached out through dimensions the hegemony couldn't perceive, touching every other hybrid child across the galaxy. For one perfect moment, all of them were connected, dozens of young beings with impossible abilities, all awakening to their true potential simultaneously. Containment breach. Dr. Velthar's voice cracked with panic as alarms wailed throughout the facility. The hybrid is somehow accessing quantum space from within the void field. But it was too late. As their daughter entered the world luminescent, like her father, with the determined violet eyes of her mother, she brought with her a gift that would reshape the galaxy. Every hybrid child across hegemony space suddenly had access to the same quantum consciousness, the same reality-altering abilities, and they were all very, very angry about their parents' treatment. Kylix held her daughter close, feeling the incredible power radiating from the tiny form. "Hello, little one," she whispered, ready to free the galaxy. The baby's response was a pulse of pure joy that made the walls of their prison dissolve like morning mist. Through the quantum link, Kylix felt hybrid children across 1,000 worlds taking their first steps toward rebellion. Their combined consciousness beginning to rewrite the fundamental forces that held the hegemony's empire together. Chancellor Vextel materialized in what remained of their cell, his serpentine form writhing with fury and fear. "What have you done?" Rinder stood, his form blazing with power amplified beyond anything his species had ever achieved. "We chose love over fear, and our daughter chose freedom over slavery." "For everyone," Kylix added, rising with their child in her arms. Around them, the space station was beginning to phase in and out of normal reality as their daughter's consciousness rewrote local physics. The war was about to begin, but this time, the slaves would be writing the battle plans. The hegemony's capital world of Nexus Prime had never experienced a prison break that started from within the fabric of reality itself. As their daughter, whom they had named Lyrian, meaning Song of Freedom in ancient ethereal, fully awakened to her quantum consciousness, space stations throughout the system began experiencing what the panicked military reports termed physics failures. Gravity stopped working in selective areas. Solid matter became permeable to specific individuals. Energy weapons fired backwards through time to strike their operators before the triggers were pulled. And through it all, hybrid children across the galaxy continued their synchronized awakening, their combined consciousness growing stronger with each passing hour. Status report. Chancellor Vextel S. Mental command lashed across the command center, where the hegemony's military leaders scrambled to understand what was happening to their empire. 17 systems reporting simultaneous hybrid uprisings, Admiral Korthvex reported, her arthropod limbs clicking nervously across her control surfaces. "They're demonstrating abilities we've never cataloged. Matter transmutation, faster than light communication, and what appears to be localized time manipulation. How is this possible? The hybrids were conditioned from birth to be docile." Dr. Velthar's voice trembled as she delivered her analysis. "Chancellor, we believe the trigger was the birth of the Voss-Rinder hybrid. Her quantum consciousness appears to have activated dormant neural pathways in every hybrid across the galaxy. They're operating as a collective intelligence now, sharing abilities and coordinating actions instantaneously across impossible distances." Through their quantum link, Kylix felt the scope of what their daughter had unleashed. Hybrid children who had been raised as slaves were suddenly accessing memories and abilities from others like them, a half-ethereal, half-crystalline hybrid on the mining world of Kepler-4. For to be discovered, she could reshape matter at the molecular level by borrowing techniques from a human Cephrean hybrid 300 light-years away. But more than sharing abilities, they were sharing hope. For the first time in their lives, none of them were alone. "We need to reach the other resistance cells," Kylix said, as they moved through corridors where reality itself seemed to bend around their daughter's presence. Hegemony soldiers' weapons passed harmlessly through them when Lyrian decided her family should be elsewhere. "Already done," Rinder replied, his eyes closed in concentration. "Lyrian is connecting us to every human and ethereal survivor. The hybrid network is becoming a communication system that spans the galaxy." It was true. Through their daughter's expanding consciousness, Kylix could suddenly sense her scattered human force as Admiral Drace's fleet hiding in the Proxima Nebula, the underground cities beneath Europa's ice, the generation ships that had been fleeing toward Andromeda for 50 years. All of them were now in instantaneous contact, their isolated resistance cells suddenly part of a coordinated galaxy-wide rebellion. The ethereal collective was experiencing the same awakening. Prince Rinder's cousin, Lord Teasler, reached out through the quantum link from his hidden sanctuary in the Magellanic clouds. "Rinder, is this truly possible? We can feel every ethereal consciousness simultaneously. The great separation has ended." "It has ended," Rinder confirmed. "But more than that, we are no longer alone in our fight." The revelation was staggering. The hybrid network hadn't just connected the children, had created bridges between every species that had contributed to their genetic makeup. Suddenly, the galaxy's enslaved peoples could coordinate their resistance efforts in ways the hegemony had never anticipated. But their daughter's most remarkable gift was yet to be revealed. As they fought their way toward the facility's command center, Lyrian began to demonstrate an ability that transcended even her parents' enhanced powers. She could edit reality retroactively. When a squad of hegemony soldiers cornered them in a dead-end corridor, Lyrian simply changed what had happened. Suddenly the soldiers had never entered the corridor at all, while the family found themselves exactly where they needed to be to access the facility's main computer core. "She's not just manipulating quantum space," Rinda breathed in wonder as they watched their infant daughter casually rewrite the fundamental nature of cause and effect. "She's operating outside linear time, which means," Kylix realized, "she can undo the damage the hegemony has caused. Not just stop future atrocities, but actually reverse past ones." Through the quantum network, they felt other hybrid children discovering similar abilities. A human collective hybrid on the former world of New Geneva reached back through time to prevent the orbital bombardment that had killed billions. A ethereal Zephyrian hybrid undid the genetic modifications that had enslaved her mother's people. For 3 generations, the hegemony's empire, built over millennia of conquest and cruelty, began to unravel as the hybrid network systematically erased its foundation. Planets that had been destroyed were suddenly restored. Species that had been driven to extinction found themselves thriving again. The dead lived, the enslaved were free, and the chains of oppression simply ceased to have ever existed. Chancellor Vextel's final desperate gambit was to activate the Empire's ultimate weapon, a quantum singularity bomb that would collapse local space-time, destroying the hybrid network before it could complete its work of liberation. But as the weapon powered up, little Lyrian looked directly at him through the command center's screens and smiled. The bomb had never been built. The research had never been conducted. The very concept had never occurred to anyone. In the sudden silence that followed, Vextel's voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. "What are you?" Kylix stepped forward, her daughter cradled in her arms. "Speaking for all the galaxy's newly freed peoples, we are what happens when love proves stronger than fear. When choice overcomes coercion. when two people decide to build something better than what they were given. We are the future, Rinder added, and you are the past. The hegemony didn't fall, simply ceased to have ever existed. Its thousand-year reign of terror, edited out of history by the combined will of children, who chose freedom over slavery, love over hate. 1 year after the Great Liberation, though time itself had become somewhat negotiable since their daughter's birth, Kylix stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching the impossible sight of Earth's restoration, where once scorched continents had marked the planet's surface. Green forests and blue oceans sparkled in the light of Sol. It wasn't just healing. It was as if the devastation had never occurred. Still getting used to retroactive victory, Rinder asked, materializing beside her with the casual disregard for physics that had become normal among their family. It's surreal, Kylix admitted, watching ships from a dozen different species approach Earth's orbital docks. I have memories of fighting a desperate war we were losing, but also memories of that war never happening. Lyrian's reality edits are comprehensive. Their daughter, now walking despite being only a year old, though age was becoming as flexible as everything else around, her toddled over carrying what appeared to be a small star she'd been playing with. The hybrid children had discovered that the universe was much more malleable than anyone had realized, and they treated fundamental forces like toys. The integration process is proceeding smoothly, reported Ambassador Threshnell, one of the former hegemony species who had volunteered to help establish the new galactic government. Her mantis-like form still intimidated most humans, but her dedication to making amends for her people's participation in the Empire was absolute. 17 more systems have petitioned to join the Collective Alliance, the alliance a governing body composed of representatives from every liberated species. With the hybrid children serving as mediators and reality editors when needed, was nothing like the hegemony had been. Membership was voluntary, decisions were made by consensus, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. Any word from the deep surveys? Kylix asked. Even with the hybrid network's galaxy-spanning consciousness, there were still mysteries to explore. The quantum children's abilities had revealed that their galaxy wasn't alone, there were others. Some populated by species that had never heard of the hegemony, others that contained threats even more dangerous. The Andromeda expedition reports first contact with 3 new species, Threshnell confirmed. All peaceful so far. The hybrid children on the survey ships report that the quantum consciousness network is beginning to extend beyond our galaxy's borders. Rinder smiled, the expression carrying harmonics that made nearby flowers bloom more vibrantly. Lyrian mentioned she's been having conversations with hybrid children in other galaxies. Apparently, love and choice create quantum resonance across cosmic distances. It was true. The phenomenon that had begun with their forced marriage had become something unprecedented in cosmic history. Wherever intelligent species encountered each other, wherever bonds of affection and mutual respect formed across biological boundaries, hybrid children were being born with reality-altering abilities. The quantum consciousness network was spreading like ripples across the universe, connecting disparate species in webs of understanding and cooperation. The philosophers are calling it the evolution of love, Threshnell noted. They theorize that consciousness itself is reaching a new phase of development, one where emotional bonds create actual changes in the fabric of reality. Kylix watched her daughter casually rearrange the molecular structure of her toy star, making it pulse in rhythm with some cosmic music only she could hear. And to think it all started because 2 prisoners decided to trust each other, not just trust, Rinder corrected, taking her hand. Through their bond now stronger than ever, and enhanced by their daughter's presence, she felt the depth of what had grown between them. Love, genuine love, built on choice rather than coercion. Their marriage had begun as a desperate gambit to save their species, but in choosing to truly see each other, to respect each other's strengths and support each other's fears, they had discovered something the hegemony's forced breeding programs could never have created. A love that literally rewrote the laws of physics. "Mama, Papa," Lyrian called, her voice carrying harmonics that made the space station's hull resonate like a bell. "The other children want to show you something." Through the quantum network, dozens of hybrid children across the galaxy shared their excitement. They had been working together on a project, using their combined abilities to create something that had never existed before. The view screen activated, showing the heart of the galaxy, where the ancient supermassive black hole had once lurked, gravitational monster that had devoured countless stars and civilizations. But in its place now pulsed something entirely new, a quantum star, a nexus of pure consciousness that radiated not destruction but creation. "We made it for everyone," Lyrian explained, her childish words carrying the weight of cosmic significance. "So no one will ever be alone again. So every species, everywhere, can talk to each other and help each other and choose to love each other." Through the quantum star's influence, the network of consciousness was expanding beyond their galaxy, reaching toward distant clusters where other civilizations were taking their first tentative steps toward becoming spacefaring peoples. Each contact brought new possibilities, new combinations of consciousness and reality that would create even more powerful hybrid children. "The universe is waking up," Rinder observed, wonder evident in his voice, "becoming aware of itself. Through the connections we're all making." Kylix nodded, feeling the truth of it through their bond. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save their species had become something far grander, the birth of a truly conscious universe, one where love and choice could overcome any challenge, where no species would ever have to face extinction or slavery alone. "Thank you," she whispered to her daughter, to her husband, to the network of hybrid children who had made it all possible. "Thank you," Lyrian replied, her smile containing the warmth of a billion stars, "for choosing love." As the quantum star pulsed with the heartbeat of an awakening cosmos, Commander Kylix Voss, now mother, wife, and architect of galactic freedom, knew that their greatest victories lay not behind them, but ahead. The universe itself was becoming their child, nurtured by choices made in love rather than fear, and that was a future worth fighting for. The end in the depths of space, where quantum consciousness dances between stars, the children play with reality itself, and the universe learns to dream.